When he ran for president in 1976, it was kind of an interesting time. My wife and I had just gotten married November 7th of '75. My little wife from Nebraska comes into the family, didn't have indoor plumbing until she was 12. I lived in Beverly Hills. There was no problem with indoor plumbing. But we got married 12 days after we got married. My father announced he was running for the presidency, and our life changed. Out on the campaign trail we went for my father, hoping that he would be elected. And it was a hard-fought campaign, but it was never personal. And if you listen and hear about Ronald Reagan, what do you hear about Ronald Reagan? You hear the 11th commandment, thou shalt not speak ill of another Republican. And what he was talking about was personal issues. You don't make it personal. He always made it political. Have we changed? Because now it seems to be all personal. And then people say, why don't we get anything accomplished? Going to Kansas City back in 1976, August of 1976, was really something, because we walked in there hoping our father would win, but knowing probably he was going to lose. And we sat down, we had dinner before we went to the convention that evening. My dad made us aware that, in fact, he was not going to have the delegates, enough delegates to win, but it was still a great convention. We got to the convention that night, and we were up in the booth, and somebody who had a few drinks came up to the booth and said, listen, here's what's going to happen after the president speaks tonight. He's going to look up at the booth, he's going to say, Ron, why don't you come on down, say a few words, and bring your lovely wife, Nancy. Well, he was so drunk, and it was such a stupid idea, that the sitting president would ask the great communicator to say anything, that we figured we won't even tell him. So nobody told my father, nobody at all. And so, while the President of the United States was speaking that night, Gerald Ford, if you ever see a photograph or a video of that night, they'll show a picture of the booth, the glassed-in booth where we were, and it's where we were, because we all left during his speech to beat the crowds to get back to the hotel. And it was an empty booth. And my sister Maureen and my wife Colleen and myself were actually having a glass of wine in the bar watching the end of Gerald Ford's speech. And when he finished, he looked up at the booth and he said, Ron, come on down, say a few words, and bring your lovely wife Nancy. And Maureen and I looked at each other, and Colleen went, my God, he's done it. And my dad now is walking down from that booth with Nancy, and he looks at Nancy and says, I have nothing prepared. And Nancy says, oh, you'll think of something. And he did think of something. He thought of a lot of things.